All right, we are going to get started here in just a little bit. We've got a bunch of people still kind of actively logging in, so we'll give this thing a couple minutes. All right, Joe, can you confirm that you can see my presentation okay?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Okay, so a couple little housekeeping things as we get started. First of all, thank you for everybody making this a priority. We have more than 500 people pre-registered. We've got 320 and counting people already logged in, so already kind of off to a pretty good start. Couple little housekeeping things. There is a questions tab in the panel there that you on the right hand side where you can go in and type in a question. We do have a Q&A section at the end, so if you have a specific question about something that I covered or perhaps Chris or Walt covered that you want to throw out in general, or you want to say, hey Walt, you mentioned this, I have a question about that, certainly can throw that in there and we can kind of get those questions answered for you as well. We will probably hit a lot of the big stuff, so kind of resist the urge to ping us with a lot of questions until we get into it a little bit. But then we'll certainly we'll take some time for questions as we kind of work our way through. Joe, if you could kind of just maybe monitor that questions tab. I've got it open as well, but just in case something comes in. And then there should be a handout section where the South Carolina Youth Soccer or US Youth Soccer zero tolerance policy has been uploaded as well. So anybody that wants to open that or download that, that is in there as well. We'll talk about that as we kind of get to the end of this, okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, just want to thank everybody for their time tonight and kind of getting through this. We've never done this club-wide before, so I appreciate everybody taking a minute or two to do this. We want to kind of reiterate our core values to everybody, and one of the reasons we're doing this is out of a desire to be excellent. Our three core values are passion, integrity, and excellence. And this is an initiative from Cesar Flores, our select director. He really challenged us with not just being passionate or not just having integrity or wanting to be excellent, but stopping and memorializing our core values, getting it out there and holding ourselves accountable to it. And we have been talking about this a lot. We have been, as a staff, committed to doing this. And there's nothing like telling 1,300 members that you're committed to your core values and putting it on the shirts, and people will call you and they will call you on things, and that is a good thing. We want to be passionate, we want to be full of integrity, and we pursue excellence. And that's one of the reasons we're stopping and we're doing this webinar tonight. Is this is an area where we want to be more excellent. We want to be more excellent. So in light of that, obviously we're having a webinar with 387 people right now currently. You know what, we must have a problem, right? What is going on out there that would make me and Cesar and Joe and other staff members say we need to stop and get everybody together and talk about code of conduct and talk about sideline behavior so that we can get this right for our kids. So obviously we want to there must be something going on, and I'm going to throw you some extremes on some of these things, and this is not the normal day-to-day stuff, but just to kind of illustrate how things go. In 2024, we had a parent call out a referee because of his weight and because of his perceived issues with mobility. This guy's, as a in a tournament, running up and down a field, trying to call a game, calling him derogatory names after the match, tracked the referee down in the parking lot, and calling him derogatory names that were revolved around his weight. Just completely inappropriate. Shocking for a club like ours, something like that to be happening. In 2023, we had a parent invite a referee into the parking lot for a fist fight after exchanging significant words with him and significant conversation with him. Completely unacceptable, not hypothetical, something that happened. One of our members about a year and a half ago, 2024 season, we had a man from our club track down a female referee in the parking lot just to tell her what a poor job she had done during the match. Literally left her quivering and in tears, coming back to tournament headquarters to get help. I actually bumped into her on the way to tournament headquarters. Absolutely horrifying kind of situation. Now, these are the extremes, right? These are things that do not happen day to day. They are not the normal course of business for us. But things that have gone on that are upsetting, obviously, and frustrating. Okay, generally speaking, we're not on the extremes. Okay, so we often get things right as individuals. I show up to a game, any other member show up to a game, and you just want to enjoy the match, and we get it right. A lot of times our teams with very strong coaching personalities are very well contained. So if you have a coach that has a good presence and a good rapport, and they control their sidelines well, those teams do very, very well. There are pockets though that where we have teams where a culture of dissent kind of grows. The coach can be negative, 2 or 3 parents can be negative, and all of a sudden the kids are negative, and there is just dissent within the team that can be very difficult, to deal with. Looking at the 3 programs, what kind of an issue do we have? The recreational program was all but impeccable. I mean, it was so positive and so enjoyable. I don't know that I had any real situations reported that kind of came up out of the ranks that were reported as problematic. The Academy League, I thought, was very good. Things are a little bit more competitive there, but generally speaking, we had very little problems in the Academy League. The Select League, where the stakes are higher, the perceived level is higher, and we're playing in more competitive leagues. Sometimes that's the spot where we tend to fall off. So we're stopping and we're pausing. The grade that I would give our club would be about a B- right now, which is not bad. A lot of times in college, I would take a B- all day long, but we want to be a little better than that in this area. So I'm going to kind of ping to a couple of our panelists. So we've invited Chris Wood and Walter Clapton to be with us today. Walter is the state's executive director for South Carolina Youth Soccer. He also works with U.S. Soccer in the coaching education world. And then Chris Wood, who's a regional level referee, and he's our SYRA, which is our state youth referee administrator. His primary focus is developing youth referees. I'm going to kind of pause and just say, hey, listen, as an outside perspective, and I warned them both that this question would be coming, where does our club fit in? How are we doing in general? So maybe Walter, give us kind of your opinion of where we fit in, and then also if you could speak to, is there a problem with sideline demeanor in general in the state of South Carolina? So Walter, what do you think? What's your feedback, real quick?
So I know you started with the extremes there, but the scary thing is the extremes next year in this presentation may be the norm. It's getting worse, right? And we see it on the news, and our clubs talk about it, and not just United FC. Other clubs are doing similar things to what you have organised this evening. But everyone's recognizing it as an issue. And when we get our reports in, and I was, before everyone came in, I was kind of joking to you, hey, it's 8:22, we've got no referee reports yet. It's highly likely that between now and Wednesday, we'll have anywhere between 5 and 10 reports that are going to come in. And that may be referees saying this incident happened with someone on the sideline, with a coach, with someone that we don't even know if they were associated with the team. So it is getting worse, and it is a problem, and I thank you guys for even organising this to discuss it. Obviously, its biggest impact is participation, and South Carolina as a state in a whole, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, soccer's growing. We've gone from 24,000 players to 31,000 players in the last 2.5 years. So a lot of people are moving to South Carolina, a lot of kids are transitioning into playing this sport, but we're seeing a lot of transient as well, where kids are coming in and leaving, and it's a lot of new players coming in and players cycling out, and a lot of that is due to just some of the environment that is created. Obviously, unenjoyable environment is one of the biggest attributes to a kid just leaving and saying, I don't want to do this anymore. Doesn't matter what age we are, and I'm sure a lot of us on the call play pickup, be it volleyball, soccer, whatever other sports we may have played when we were younger and we continue to do now. If it was an unenjoyable environment as adults, we would leave it. And it's the same for the children too. And it's one of the biggest, the biggest drops in participation we see is coming into U13, which, no surprise, that's when soccer turns more competitive, right? When the competition level increases, we suddenly see an increase in the incident reports, an increase in, the state referee coming to us and saying, hey, look, we're getting more and more incidents. This is becoming a problem. So that's really one of the, and it quickly gets out of control. I know you had some of your extremes, Bill. I got some of mine. We had a parent swing a leg onto the field last year. A girl's running down the sideline and a parent lunges into the pitch to tackle a player that's running down the sideline. And we've got the video footage, right? Everyone records every game now, and a lot of the time it's on the parent side as well. But that was one of our extreme incidents last year. You mentioned about the referees following refs to a parking lot, and we've had this at all levels. We had a report that from a recreation game, a dad has followed a 16-year-old referee to the parking lot who's trying to get in the car with their mum, and he's now standing there and telling the parent how bad of a job their 16-year-old did refereeing a recreational U7, U8 game. So it's happening, and it's bad, and it does affect participation, not just of players, but of referees as well. And there's two frustrations, right? Because we know if we show up to a game and there's not a referee, there's no one to govern that match. So it's twofold. It's affecting participation of players, but also referees at the same time. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on, Bill, on the coach and education side, because for any of you on the call that are coming through the coach education pathway that may coach in rec or coach in junior academy or competitive, we talk all the time about values that kids get from sport. And one of the big ones that the federation that we talk about all the time is the autonomy support. And how do we help these children become autonomous learners? Well, one of the hard things is when they've got everyone shouting and creating this hostile environment, they can't learn anymore because their brain is so overwhelmed with what's going on the sideline. Now my coach is talking to the referee too. The referee is trying to talk to parents, talk to us. So from our end on the coach education side, it just creates this environment that isn't good for learning. And when we want players to be autonomous and make their own decisions, sometimes we're attributing to the behaviors that prevent them from learning. And if we all stood here, we'd say, hey, yeah, we want our children to learn when they come into this space. That's what we want from this experience. We want them to belong. We want them to learn. So yeah, it is a problem, Bill. The extremes are becoming a little bit more normal. And when we look at this holistically, we all play a role in the development of these young people. So, I think a lot of the time we look at the people directly involved, the referees, the coaches that are with the players in that environment. But, as parents, spectators, you don't take a side part. You have a huge role in the development and the environment we place these children in.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to come back to that coaching education piece again in a few minutes. So kind of hold on to that thought too. So Walter, on a scale of one to A, B, C, D, E, F, where would you rank our club? What grade would you give us currently? We're just here to be better, so don't be afraid to shoot straight.
I would agree with you, B. I don't know if we've got any club in the state that I could turn around and say is an A right now. I would say if I pulled every report we got over last year, we've got 56 members. I'm pretty sure that we'll be hitting nearly the 50 mark of members that are involved, right? It takes two to tango. Two sides are causing the environment and are listed in a report. And I would say that the clubs that haven't been listed in a report, it's probably because the referee couldn't find it on that given day or refereed 7 games in a row and was like, I just haven't got the bandwidth today, so they lucked out.
Yeah. Chris, let me ping over to you. What are your thoughts? So, is there a problem at large? And then where would you rank our club kind of coming into this? And again, we're here to get better. What would be your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, thanks so much. Number one, the fact that you're having this event indicates that there is a rapport between us, the referee community, and United FC. So you and I talked about that. I voluntarily told you that we respect your club. And so we have relationships and feel like there is some trust between the referee community and your club. We still have a problem, right? So I think there's a couple different ways to look at it. One is in the numbers, right? So we lose 30 to 40% of our referees every year. That's just churn. That's not even new referees. We certified 120 new referees 4 weeks ago in a sort of a launch into 2025. And honestly, those referees, the brand spanking new referees, may or may not stick around for a ton of reasons. Our challenge is, and everybody wants good referees, right? Our challenge is we lose the second, third, and fourth year referees, all right? And the reasons why a brand spanking new referee will not stick it out for year 2 they play club, their parents, they don't drive, their parents didn't realize the time commitment, maybe somebody yelled at them. I mean, look, it could be a lot of things. The reasons the good referees quit shrink parents and coaches. That is in the polling that says that the reason those that's where the referee shortage is. The shortage is not brand new referees. Everybody thinks it's a fantastic idea, but losing good referees because it's not worth it, is the challenge. And I think what you said was spot on, and that is that the coach's personality has a lot to do with that. So I would think, there are the reason you don't get an A or an A minus is because we all know that there's levels of like great, and then there's that average that brings it down, right? And every club has, I think, pockets of, and I think you may have used that term earlier, pockets of challenges. And so from my standpoint, I feel like that, and maybe this sums it up. What I don't understand is why there is a culture of entitlement, that for some reason a referee is entitled to take the abuse. Like we would never expect this to be directed at our kids who are playing. Like we would never expect that. But because the referee's paid, maybe it's because of how referees have been positioned on TV. Maybe it's because referees are viewed as a necessary evil. Maybe it's because referees are viewed as typically taking something away. And I know we'll talk about that. There seems to be sort of an acceptability that because somebody's being given 40 or 50 or 60 bucks to do that job, that we forget about who they are. So, and that is not a United FC comment. That is a general comment. So I want to be very clear, but.
Okay, good. So we're going to launch forward a little bit, and I appreciate you guys doing that. We recognize there's a problem, and that's obviously why we're here, right? We're kind of getting into this because we know, okay, we've got some stuff that we want to be better at. I'm going to kind of ping a lot of this stuff up because I know, Walter, you've got a hard stop at 9. One of the things that I talk with our teams a lot of times is about the soccer learning environment, right? And I talk a lot about staying in your lanes as parents, okay? The parent's lane is encouragement. You should be there to just blindly root for and pull for your player. Your job is encouragement. The coach's job on the other sideline is to provide accurate, relevant coaching information. That's why he's there. And the referee is there to tell us whether this is a goal kick or a corner kick, or who's going to throw the ball in, the purple team or the red team. And if you think about this, just perfect environment. And Walt, you referenced it just a little bit, and I'm going to come back to you in a minute and talk about this environment. This is exactly what we'd love to see the average game be. Parents are encouraging, coaches have accurate, relevant information. The referee is there. He wants to do it right. Chris, you and I talked about that earlier this week. The referee wants to get this right. And this is the environment that we get to go in and play. And I think what happens, though, a lot of times is these pieces get turned around. Let me give you some kind of ideas here. If the parents decide that they want to be the coach, they get out of their lane and they start giving, what Walter referenced a minute ago, all kinds of information coming from all over the field. If the coach decides that he's going to be the referee, he's going to be saying, no, that's a goal kick. No, that's a corner kick. Now he's not coaching anymore. He's kicked into referee mode. If the parents decide that they want to be the referee, they're going to be the ones that are going to say whether we got this right or whether we got this wrong, whether it's something simple like a throw in or something difficult. Is this a penalty kick? Is this a yellow card? The parents decide that they're going to go do the refereeing for the referee, and they're going to try to influence the referee. If the coach sometimes has to counteract negativity, and I've had these conversations before where maybe you have a parent that is throwing negative things off the sideline toward their player. As a coach, now it's very difficult for us to coach that player. We have to kind of counteract that with lots of encouragement because they're not getting encouragement from their parent or the sideline. Now we can't even give them any constructive criticism because we have to kind of counteract that. And then there's also this idea of what I call college football blindness. Just anything that goes against my team is booed or negative or cannot possibly right. Anything that goes wrong, whether it was accurate or inaccurate, is just met with negativity. That changes sometimes referee neutrality. Again, the referee just wants to get this right. They're not here to make mistakes or be frustrating. So this anything that goes against my team has to be jeered or booed or is a negative thing. That is very difficult for referees to navigate around. And obviously we're pulling for our teams. There's a bit of a bias there, but trying to keep these things out of that world. Because if you think about where we were in the previous slide, staying in your lanes, parents be encouraging, coaches accurate information, referees going to tell us, going to make decisions certainly as the game goes on. That's where we want to stay. And you get out of your lane, you can see quickly. I threw 4 or 5 things here quick just to kind of illustrate where it goes wrong and how we get out of these lanes so quickly. That can be very, very challenging. Walter, I really value your opinion on this. And again, I know you've got a hard stop real quick. You referenced it earlier. Talk to me about that learning environment and why staying in those lanes is so important, especially for youth players where they're growing and developing. Give me some of your thoughts.
Yeah, so and obviously Joe and SCYSA are coming through some of this, the new information at the moment on recent courses that they've done with the Federation too. One of the big theories we look at is called the cognitive load theory. And the theory stands on that you want to minimize distractions. And this isn't just for children, this is for everyone, and this is just a learning principle. So when we're trying to teach anyone anything, we want to make sure that distractions are reduced. So for example, this evening at 9 o'clock, I said to you, I'm teaching a C course on Zoom now, right? We want to make sure distractions are minimized. Phones are away, nothing else is going on. You're locked in a room and you can concentrate on what you're trying to be taught. And it's the same with the players. So when we've got, essentially outside interference, that takes up a children's working memory. So players are on the field, they're trying to make decisions, and I think I said too, we would all agree we want children to be autonomous thinkers, critical thinkers, make their own decisions. But if we're muddy in that water, right, and we're constantly chirping either as spectators, just anyone in that environment, players can't retain information because they're thinking, well, I just heard this from the sideline and someone told me to play it down the line. But Coach Joe told me that we were trying to build through the middle and that was our objective this week. So what do? Now the whole decision making is blown out the window, the moment's gone, they've just lost the ball and now they're being shouted at because they turned the ball over and now someone on the sideline is saying, press, press, press. So there's a huge domino effect that happens. So when we're looking again, I think I said it holistically at this learning environment, we all play a role on building an environment that supports their learning. And you've used this statement, staying in your lane, and that's kind of it, right? It's we want to put players as coaches, we want to put players in a position where we've given them information, we've given them objectives, and they've got to figure out how to get from A to B. As soon as other voices start coming in, it's now impacting them making a decision or looking for the cues and triggers because they're now looking for something else. And we see it every week, right? And like I said, it is a slippery slope because when I look next to me and I see Cesar doing it, I'm going, well, Cesar's shouting at his kid, I'm going to shout at mine now. And I'm going to tell him to do this because I see him over there coaching, or her over there coaching. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to shout something too. So, yeah, we all play a part. And again, thank you, Bill, for even bringing this to the attention because I think we might know it, but we don't kind of know what we're looking at sometimes. So I think this creates a good kind of visual and and something for us to understand as the spectators and coaches too.
Yeah, good, Walter, and thank you so much. You can jump whenever you need to. I appreciate that. That was the key part I wanted you to cover. I anecdotally, I had a situation today where we have a particular objective with set pieces as a team. We want to try to change angles and change timing of set pieces so that they're less predictable. And I literally heard a parent yell, "Hey, just shoot that ball!" And I don't want them to just shoot that ball. I want to have a different kind of a set piece restart so that we are a little bit less predictable, potentially turning it in our direction. So we're teaching maybe a little more sophisticated brand, maybe something that's bigger and better, going from good to great kind of stuff. And when the wrong information comes off the sidelines, again, getting out of lane, that can be very difficult for players. It can be very difficult for players. Massively important. Now, if to move on, if you think about if that was as simple as this meeting was, then we wouldn't call this meeting, because just staying in your lane is really easy to talk about. There are a couple things that get us out of our lane very, very quickly. Okay. We're not crazy people, right? We look at that and we think, yeah, you're right. I should be cheering for my kid. And you know what? I really do trust my coach to give good information. He knows the game really well. And yeah, the referee's not perfect, but they get a lot of it right. And I can go do that. But where things change, okay, There are reasons that people jump out of their lawn chairs on sidelines, okay? We're not crazy people. We want the best for our kids. Obviously, we are vested in their participation. Parents are driving them to the game. I was at a tournament all weekend in Athens, right? We drive to Athens. We stay in a hotel for 1 or 2 nights. We eat at Chick-fil-A 5 times. We're vested in these kids' participation. We want to see them do well, but we're not showing up to cause a problem, okay? Problems come from one of 2 areas. They come from a desire for justice. We see something happen, whether we perceive it rightly or wrongly, and we think, oh my word, that's just inaccurate. We just got that wrong. That's when a balanced, normal parent jumps out of their lawn chair. Oh my gosh, that is wrong. Okay. The second piece is this idea of safety. If something is perceived as unsafe, that bad tackle that can happen, that shove, that kid that gets caught up in this energetic competitive game that just does something that's outside of control. When we feel like our player is in an unsafe position or an ongoing unsafe environment, that gets Mama Bear up out of her chair fast. And that is really normal. Again, if you think back to the first slide that talked about how do you stay in your lane, that's really easy, okay? But when we see our player who is getting everything right and doesn't achieve it because of some injustice or because of some safety issue, Mama Bear jumps out of her lawn chair, and it's perfectly understandable. It happens. When you see your player physically hit in a way that was unfair, you literally see them get tripped, get tackled, get pushed, get pulled. Mama Bear jumps out of her chair. Normal person, totally balanced, up out of her lawn chair yelling, hey, that wasn't fair, okay? When we see a young player executing in a really positive way, and then a referee who's an authority figure, maybe they get it wrong, that again makes Mama Bear jump out of your chair. And if you think as a parent, think about that. Think about how often when you do get drawn to the wrong place, it is because of either justice or safety. And our appeal as the club, and again, this is the tougher spot, right? Because you have this innate reaction to injustice or this innate reaction to something that has caused an injury or could cause an injury. You have to trust your coach. You have to trust your coach, okay? You have to trust the program directors. You have to trust the club to deal with that stuff. There is no environment where Mama Bear can get out of her chair and interact with a referee and have it go down the right road ultimately, okay? So good coaches build rapport with referees before, during, and after games. They build good rapport with referees over long periods of time. There's almost never a time that I go to a game in South Carolina and I don't know the referee. That would be the same of Joe and Cesar and many of our coaches. You build rapport so that when you do have a question, when you do have an appeal, you are knowledgeable as a coach. You're knowledgeable, you have a good reputation, and you can be heard by the person that you're making the appeal to. If something needs to go beyond the coach, okay, and needs to be escalated to the program director, Joe or Cesar can handle things that need to come up. Hey, this happened in this game. It was injustice. It was a safety issue. If necessary, they can be escalated, okay? And then the club always, when things get to that kind of a level, will support getting it on the radar because there is a process for referee feedback, referee assignment, referee learning. Okay, there's a process for all of that can be engaged. There's a couple questions in here already coming from parents about, so what are we supposed to do? And here's the answer to some of that stuff. Trust your coach to navigate those moments. That tackle, that injustice, trust them to handle that. And if it can't be handled in the moment, it will get escalated, okay? The piece that I would touch on, and then I'm going to break over to Chris to kind of talk about what's the referee perspective on how do we respond in these moments where Mama Bear naturally comes up. I had a great conversation with a parent today, and we kind of talked through what do you do in that moment of injustice, okay? We're playing, something gets handled incorrectly, and we have to move on. You have to trust your coach, and then ultimately the coach has to be able to teach their players to be able to move from what happened to you was wrong, and now we have to move to, so now what are we going to do about it, okay? So we come in, something happens, it doesn't go our way, we concede, we have a goal taken back, whatever happens to be the moment that has cost us something, okay? As a coach, I have to switch to, now this is adversity that we are going to have to overcome, okay? And I had that happen to a player this weekend. I had a player came in, really good tackle, poked a ball out of bounds, player fell over him. A great tackle, my opinion, great tackle. Penalty kick awarded, yellow carded my young player who's 9, 10 years old, absolutely in tears. He's never been cautioned in his life. He comes off the field. It's a moment of injustice. And my conversation with him was, now we have to get past that. A 2-1 game was now a 2-2 game. So now I have a team that's tied 2-2 because of this perceived injustice. And we now we're going to deal with injustice. Now it's adversity, and we're going to have to play through some adversity that maybe we weren't counting on. And it was a great moment. Certainly not my preference for where to be, but we got to teach that player something. We got to teach that team something. And ultimately, they did overcome this adversity and were able to move forward. Now, I'd like it to be gotten right by the referee. Mistakes get made, and they're going to get made. You have to trust your coach. You have to trust the club to navigate these things. You have to trust our discretion around when do you move from injustice to simply, this is adversity that we will need to overcome, or just deal with it if we can't overcome it, okay? Chris, now this is the toughest question of the evening now, okay? How do we deal with adversity? What is that rapport like with the coach? And ultimately, you as the SYRA here in South Carolina, how do we deal with that? Because I'm getting a lot of questions from parents around, so what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to say? Trusting your coach to navigate that. How does it look from your side?
So sorry, Honey just joined the call because she was let out. That's our Great Dane. So this I have been stewing on this since you and I started talking literally a week and a half ago about this. This is 40 layers deep because it's subjective. Let me start by saying, as a referee, and I know the referees, we make mistakes in every single match. Every single match we make a mistake. Whether it's fitness or positioning or missing a throw in, they all have levels of importance. And we talk about key match incidences where we're trying to be right in the big moments. But I don't know what Mama Bear's tolerance is for fouls. I don't know what that is. So sometimes there'll be games where there's clicking at the heels and there's lots and lots and lots of fouls, but it's not out of control. It's just friggin' fouls, right? And then there's games where the teams have a temperature level that continues to rise. And honestly, I can't prevent the first big one. I just can't. Like, I don't know what's coming. My job as a referee then is to understand, is this a 70-mile-an-hour match or is this a 55-mile-an-hour match, and then respond, right? So, and then I've got referees that haven't been in that situation. So for me, it's about maybe perspective. It's about, I can't tell you not to jump out of the lawn chair. I did it myself. So jump out of the lawn chair. Then just remember that's a moment, not a match. Like when we train referees, we are now talking about you referee matches, not moments. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to solve that problem. But what does the match look like? Do you pick up on temperature rising? Do you pick up on conflicts between players? Do you know who your leaders are, your instigators are? Do you know who? And this is a skill. So for me, when I'm thinking about these moments, injustice is going to happen. It is absolutely going to happen. The law says we can't fix it after a restart. Let it go. Like the law tells me if we restart, then I can't go back and redo it. So as a parent, understand that's that is a line we've crossed, right? Doesn't make it better, but by law, I can't fix that in general, right? So I also think about the idea that you do have to trust your coach. You have to trust your club. Let's say one of those matches goes to you know where, right? And there were instances where the referee didn't control the personalities. The referee didn't control. There is a grievance process. both with South Carolina Youth Soccer and with the SRC, screferees.com. You can actually fill out a form on screferees.com and say, hey, this is what happened, but let your coach do it, because I'm just going to tell you right now, coming from a coach we respect, a coach that was in the match, is different than coming from a parent, because there is just inherent bias with the parent, whereas a coach, there is bias. He's coaching a certain team, but there is sort of that credibility of the game, right? So there is a path if it really goes south. Here's the most important thing. As referees and as referee assigners, we don't want to put referees on games that they can't handle. So that feedback then allows us to get with the assigners and go, hey, he or she, we learned, because often you don't know till you go through it, we learned this referee probably doesn't need to be on that rematch. Like, we got that, but they do not need to be at maybe that level, at that important part. So this is there is recourse, there's a path, but it's a very tough question because it's so subjective. And I guess the only way I would finish that is that just remember that the referee is human, and how you interact with them in that moment can absolutely change what happens in the future for them, just like when adults interact with your kids. So when you choose to act out against that referee and not trust your coach, like, it absolutely matters. It matters.
Just talk to me a little bit about interactions with the coaches in that moment. I mean, I think there's an amount of professional, tone appropriate kind of conversation can happen in the moment, right? You talked about those big moments that can happen. Talk to me about what's relevant, what's effective in that moment, and what is not effective in the moment, because we've got a lot of our coaches here tonight too as well. So
yeah, so asking questions about what actually happened is absolutely fair game, and we tell our referees they should be able to answer, using the law, those sort of questions. Personal questions, challenging the referee's ability to referee at that level. That's where it goes more personal, as opposed to, can you just recount to me what happened? I just need to understand why you made that decision. That is fine. Typically, parents can't have that conversation. The only conversation the parents can have is sort of in over the top relative to the emotion and what they saw and what they felt. The coach often can have a more law-based conversation with the referee about, just talk me through it. The referee's responsibility is explain to Cesar, by law, this is what I saw and this is what I called. I could be wrong, could have missed it. Brain could have just frozen up, could have had too many things going on, but at least that explanation happens. That can't happen with parents. It's just not an environment for that. There's no way to explain that. With the coach, it can.
Yep. The right tone, the right timing goes a long ways. Obviously, the coach that's just belligerent and constantly blasting you with questions, it's ineffective, right? So just the right amount of question around what did you see, what was the decision, that's appropriate for you. But obviously, there's a line that a coach can go over as well. And I don't want to drive too far into that tonight, but I appreciate that. The one thing that you said that I think sticks with me particularly, Chris, is once the game restarts, it's over. Right? Mm-hmm. It's no longer an injustice. It has shifted to being adversity that we have to overcome. And as coaches, we have to make that change. And as parents, we have to make that change as well. We go from a reaction, a mama bear moment, the game gets restarted. Okay, now my job is encouragement again, and I'm going to be encouraging them to get over top of now this moment, right? Now we have to get back on top of it. Even if it was perceived as unjust, we still have to and you said just get on with it. And I agree with that. At that point, you have to just kind of get on with it. I'm going to jump now to the zero tolerance policy, because this is something that I don't know that our members know a lot about. It's not something we talk about a lot. South Carolina Youth Soccer does have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to navigating with referees and parents. Okay, and this is not something that we come across a lot. It happens from time to time. The zero tolerance is for harassment of officials, okay? If harassment of officials starts to go on, and I have put this document in the documents link in there. You ought to be able to download it. It's under handouts in your sidebar there. You ought to be able to download if you want it. And Chris, you can kind of talk us through the practicality of how this plays out. The coach may be asked to control a sideline if it starts to get a little bit spicy. The coach will be asked then, if that can't be handled, the coach will be asked to move the spectator. If the coach will not do it, the game is abandoned. That game is over. If the spectator will not leave, the game is abandoned. But the referees should not be navigating with parents on the sidelines. Now, this is an escalation of this policy that we've had in the past. And obviously, when you start calling about it, you call something like this zero tolerance. That's big, right? That's really big. So, Chris, talk us through South Carolina Youth Soccer's zero tolerance policy, not letter of the law, but at a practical level. And how often are you seeing spectators actually be removed from matches or matches abandoned because of poor sideline behavior?
Yeah, so at a very high level, this policy says coaches are responsible for the sideline. That is literally what it means. And I think when I got into this, which actually wasn't that long ago, we would talk about, yeah, I sent this fan out, or I took care of this, or I had to. This is it allows the referees, honestly, to set what that acceptable level is. So if I have a brand new referee that's an AR on the fan side, and he or she is 14 or 15 years old, and she tells me at halftime that the guy in the white hat won't leave her alone, so I am going to Joe, and I am going to go to Joe and go, Joe, guy in the white hat, if he says another word to that AR, I'm going to have to ask you to have them leave. That's basically a practical application of what this is. So what we're training is to have a conversation with the coach before the match. Hey, Joe, I'm Chris. Nice to see you. This is the amount of time the half is going to take. This is the sub rules for this competition. By the way, you're responsible for the fans on your sideline. If I ask for your help, that means they've crossed the tolerance line for this particular crew. You good with that? Joe would say, yeah, man, I got you. And so then when the moment happens, the only real lever that we have, and I don't mean only meaning not important, but if we as referees don't feel like Joe is taking care of that concern on the sideline, then it's not worth it. It's a game, and we will not play it anymore. So when parents hear that from me tonight, they may think, "Oh, well, you would actually like abandon the match?" Absolutely, but understand how difficult the decision that is. You may have a 16-year-old in the middle of the field that has to tell all of those fans and all those players, I've made a decision, we are not going to continue playing. That's why it's super important that coaches back us up. And typically, look, at your club, that's the trust the club, respect. That is not an issue. But you are going to hear from the coach, not the referee. The referee is literally not supposed to interact at all with the fans regarding their behavior, period. Leave it to the coach.
When we talked earlier this week, you have to decide what kind of a conversation you're going to have when you have these kinds of things come up. And we want to be Luke Skywalker and not Darth Vader. So
yeah,
no disrespect for anybody that's in those. This is the Darth Vader part of sideline behavior, right? I mean, if it gets to the point where you have to be abandoning a match because of a parent on the sideline, that's not where we want to be, right? I want to be creating that positive environment for my kid. I want to be setting him up in a place where like Walter talked about, I don't want too much information coming. I want to be encouraging, let the coaches coach, understand that the referees are not going to be perfect, but they're trying to get it right. This is the Darth Vader side of it, right? How often does it get this bad? I mean, how many matches are getting abandoned? How many parents are getting ejected? Is this rare or common right now?
Walter, you're back on. You may have a better answer to this. It is rare. Like, this is not something that happens regularly. Walter, I don't know if there are numbers for this, or if you want to chime in.
The last result and the last thing a referee wants to do is abandon a match. My stance on this is I want referees to use it more. but referees seem to have a really big heart.
It's tough.
And it's not used as much. We have a lot of referees that come to us 2 days later to tell us about the behavior from a sideline and can you talk to the club? And my response is always, you should have pulled this game from underneath everyone on the day, because after the fact, I'm coming to Bill and I'm saying, hey, Bill, there was a problem Sunday, but it wasn't addressed. And yes, we have a policy in place, but the referee didn't want to take the game away. But the reality is becoming, and this policy came in after one of our referees in Charleston was followed to a parking lot and pushed over, an older gentleman. And we're talking like early 70s old, was pushed over after a junior academy game. And that's what, so you can see here, this policy is now 18 months old. And it got to the point that the extremes Bill was showing at the start of the call were happening every week. So we brought this policy in. So it's rare at the moment, but as a league, we are telling the referees, you have to use this, because it's getting to a point, there's been so many initiatives nationwide to try and address this, but the one thing those initiatives don't do is take the game away. And it's almost to the point, that's where we're at here. It's just get rid of the game, because if the game is causing so much distress on the sideline, so much unrest between spectators and referees and players and coaches, and it's just that ugly, we shouldn't have been playing anymore, because we're trying to help young people grow. We're trying to teach them soccer, and at that point, it's not happening anymore, so there's no point in playing. But like I said, referee's heart seems to be like the Grinch at Christmas. It's just getting bigger and bigger. So
yeah. Well, and again, it needs to be like the last resort, right? And if we're attentive to the learning environment and understanding why we react sometimes when we do, and we can kind of double down on trusting the coach and trusting the club, and we have an appropriate process in place and a right mindset, we should never be here, right? I mean, a club like ours, this should be never happening within our club. You know, again, people that really value getting it right, you know, I would think this would be very, very rare. So, all right, I'm going to switch now to Q&A. There were a number of questions that came in. Some of them I think we've answered along the way. So if you do have a question, go ahead and drop it in there. First one that I got was, should parents in general voice or not voice either praise or criticism to a referee's call? Should there not be any communication between parents and referee, period? I would say, and maybe Cesar, I'll let you kind of chime in on this if you want to. I would say in general, you root for your player if you're a great person. If you're a great person, you could be rooting for your player and maybe even their opponent. Like if your player got nothing but praise from you and you recognize the high quality play from somebody else on the other team, you said, wow, buddy, that was a great shot. Good stuff. If you could be that person, you would have done level 10, what could be expected of you, okay? If you're a real pundit and you say to the referee after the game, hey, ref, I thought you called a great match, and you can do it without sounding sarcastic, you could do some interacting with referees, but that sometimes can come across the wrong way. So I would say in general, only positive to the referee. If you can keep sarcasm from sounding like it gets in there, in general, you root for your player. I think that's the best space to be in. Cesar, what are your thoughts about any feedback for the referee at all? What's your opinion?
Bill, I think if he's gonna, I always ask myself, you know, if he's gonna help the game, should I proceed or should I keep it to myself? And that's something that I always tell my parents, my kids. Recently, I learned that it's a trifecta. You know, it is the kid, the parent, and the coach, and then we are responsible to provide that healthy, positive learning environment for the kid. And then in the middle, you have the referee, you have opponent, and those are aspects that we cannot control. So if it's the end of the game, is my comment gonna help or is it gonna hurt? You know, or is it really necessary? You know, should I just focus on the positive? Should I focus on my kid? Should I focus on how the team play? So that's my approach always with my team, with my parents. At the end of the game, you know, there's not much to say to the referee. I always tell my parents, you know, let's move on if it was a great game or if it wasn't a great game. At the end of the day, it's a game, and our responsibility is to support our kids and help create a healthy environment for everyone, you know, for the kid, for the person, for the referees. At the end of the day, we have to treat everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of the bad call, the good call. It's a game.
Good, great response. Yeah, I agree. Second question came in, kind of revolved around player safety. Okay. And questioned. We understand that the referee calls whether it's a throw in for the red or throw in for the purple, but it's player safety a lot of times, which is where emotions and negativity can come from. Okay. And again, I think we addressed this as the presentation went on. Certainly, player safety is a massive part of what referees do. I would say in general, when I see that bad tackle that makes me get up out of my chair, that makes Mama Bear get up out of her chair, 99.99% of referees see it as well, and they are right on it. Okay, if a an escalating team that maybe Chris mentioned earlier, that team that kind of gets hotter and hotter and hotter as it goes on, a coach that can read that as well can tone and volume appropriate talk to a referee about, hey, this is getting spicy, hey, this is starting to get a little bit hotter. There's an appropriate amount of communication that can go on there, as things can potentially escalate sometimes at the higher levels. Again, you have to trust your coach to do that. Okay, and our coaches can see it and they can feel it. And again, I believe 99.9% of the time the referees can as well. So again, trusting your coach to navigate in those waters. Okay, in those waters. Okay. Who tells the parents to chill out, us or the coaches? So if you've ever played for me, you know that I will tell you to chill out when you need to chill out. Okay. So I may have even done that this afternoon at one point. Wonderfully spicy match down in Athens. We're two fantastic teams going at it in a wonderful way. I had to get up off my bench and say, Furman parents, be quiet. It is the coach's job to keep their sideline in control. Joe, what's your opinion about who keeps the parents chill? Do you echo the same thing? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I'm the same way. It happens from time to time in a lot of games, and a lot of the time it's just a heat of the moment. Like you said, it might just be a bad call, or not even a bad call, or something that people don't agree with, and it might just get a little bit feisty. So if I hear that on my side, some of my parents would back me up, and I'll shout over. I'll say, hey, Furman guys, please relax, please sit down. Let the referee call the game. That's pretty much as far as it goes. If ever it escalates, I'll have a conversation with them afterwards. But they're very, especially my parents, they're quick to trust me and listen straight away. So that's what I'll say.
Yeah, great. There's a question here about does this policy apply to high school games as well? So I'm assuming the question revolves around the zero tolerance policy. Chris, I don't know that. I know there's a different high school culture. You know, I kind of put that in that college football culture as well, right? Where you're pulling for your team and you want your team to be successful, and anything that goes wrong is negative and booed and jeered. Is there a zero tolerance in high school? Can you speak to that as well? I know that they run under a different set of sanctioning and signers and different kind of world. What's going on over there?
Yeah, high school is its own animal, 100% its own animal. This has nothing to do with high school. That is South Carolina High School League. I don't know of a no zero tolerance policy. What I do know is that we have athletic directors and folks on site that we interact with that handle fans. So it's similar, I guess, but it is totally separate from youth soccer.
Yeah, and it's a different culture there too. You know, you do get that
Different
college
culture.
football thing going on, and it's difficult sometimes when your player goes from club in the fall, where we want everything to be very deliberate and developmental, and we have zero tolerance policies, and you've got Joe jumping off the bench yelling for you to be quiet, and then you show up at a high school game, and it is a different world. There is lots of jeering and harassing and booing and hissing, and it's a very different thing. And then to be able to toggle back to a more sophisticated, knowledgeable fan base, that can be difficult. That can be difficult to do. You have to kind of divorce yourself from that a little bit as well. So, okay, last question says, does this apply to parent interactions or just parent to referee interactions? That's a great question. So,
Yeah.
Cesar, why don't you take that one? So one parent talking to another parent as opposed to even the referee. What do you recommend? I'm wearing purple. This other parent hypothetically is wearing blue. How does that interact?
Yeah, I think that goes back to this first question. You know, is it going to help the environment? Me as a parent talking back to another parent from the opposing team, and the reality is that it's not. And that goes back to integrity, to our values, one of our values. And it comes down to, what's the right thing to do in that moment. Is it going to help or is it going to hurt?
It feels good though, doesn't it? Right? You hear that one parent getting over the line. You hear them say things that you would never say. And to give it back to that person feels good, but it doesn't help the moment at all. I agree with that so much. That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
Bill, I would say this does apply to that. And the way that we would teach referees is we would call Joe over and we'd call the other coach over and we would go, this is unacceptable. This is getting out of hand. You both need to handle it now. That would be sort of the process I would teach for referees to handle. So it does apply to, because that's just part of the environment on the sideline.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I want to just thank everybody for their time. Okay, that is a ton. That is a ton. Okay, focus on your lanes. Be prepared for when the mama bear moment happens. Right, when something just naturally makes you get up out of your chair. Right, it's that moment of injustice or perceived safety. Trust your coach. Trust the club to navigate in these areas. Chris, you've been massively helpful. Hearing from someone that just wants to get it right, right? And you're helping not you get it right in your games, but all the referees that you're working with statewide hugely helpful to us, And I know Walter had to step away. Having the state's executive director there kind of outline the magnitude of the problem, but also help us understand that the learning environment that we set up is incredibly important for these kids, And so that's absolutely fantastic. So we've kept everybody on for a long time. We've been almost an hour here, so. Thank you for your efforts, Joe, Cesar, Chris, and Walt in absentia. Thank you for your time, guys. I really do appreciate it. I think it's been beneficial for us.
Thanks so much. We
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.